If you want to make change, you have to first start by changing the conversation. One of our values is that we be in a listening posture.
What we look for are films that we feel like are addressing important subject matter.
They select films that are looking past maybe the content of the film and what the art is really trying to say to culture.
It lets people watch these films, learn about these issues, and then have a conversation.
The Q&As at Windrider are so much different than other places. These people really want to know why you made the film.
Windrider, it attracts people who want a little bit more substance out of the movies that they're making or consuming.
Welcome to the Windrider Virtual Film Forum, and thank you for joining us. My name is Terry Bullock, and I'm the director for Windrider here in the Bay Area. Normally, I would have been backstage at the Menlo-Atherton Performing Arts Center, peeking through the curtain and watching as you all filled the theater. With COVID-19 guidelines, it seems like the whole world is going virtual. Thus, tonight I'm greeting you via a camera, but I'm just as happy to have you along for the evening. We'll miss the lively and thoughtful audience questions that emerge each year. However, we know that tonight's virtual program will spark wonderful conversations among your family and friends. This is our 11th year of the Windrider Film Forum, and though we cannot gather together physically, this will be a night of connection and community. Even now, I am joined virtually by my good friend and Windrider co-founder, Will Stoller-Lee, to help me introduce our program for tonight. Hi, Will.
Hi, Terry. It's great to be with you virtually this evening. Although I'll miss the opportunity to stand on stage with you at MAPAC, I'm truly looking forward to our program tonight.
So am I. I'm excited about sharing these films and filmmakers. During these uncertain times, I think we've all gained a deeper appreciation for our essential workers and for compassion and empathy. I feel like artists, including filmmakers, provide us with a different kind of essential service, and their compelling voices shed light on the most important topics of our day.
That's right, Terry. The past several months have disrupted many of our firmly held assumptions and beliefs about our own health and safety, job security and economic stability, and issues about racism and privilege that are often so difficult to discuss. At Windrider, our vision is to explore these issues honestly, but we also try to approach these difficult topics with an openness to conversation and an invitation to listen more carefully to one another. Our virtual film forum tonight is another example of this vision.
Windrider is organized by an amazing group of people who volunteer their time and talent to produce this highly curated film forum. I am immensely grateful to them, and I want to take you behind the scenes just a bit. Part of what we usually do is to bring the filmmakers to our community, pamper them, and let them know how important their work is. This year's challenge was to find a way to show them the Windrider hospitality from a distance. Wendy and Kayla, our hospitality chairs, outdid themselves, and they found a way to do just that. Here's a glimpse of our filmmakers' reactions to receiving their surprise dinner delivered from their favorite local restaurant.
It's dinner from Windrider. Thank you, Windrider. I wish I was having this dinner with you tonight.
Hi, Terry. It's Andrew. This is Jesse and Dom. We want to say thank you to everybody at Windrider Bay Area for the awesome meal.
Thank you.
Hope you enjoy the screening of Identity, the Andrew Nimmer story tonight.
Thank you so much for having this meal delivered. That was so kind of you guys.
Look at this. Wow. Look at that.
So honored to be a part of this festival. I wish I could be there in person, but I feel so taken care of.
Thanks again, and we love you guys.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.
I'm so excited to tune in and watch this virtually, and I'm really looking forward to the event. Thank you. Cheers.
A big welcome and wish you were here to our filmmakers, and a grateful thank you to all of the Windrider volunteers.
We also want to thank our incredible sponsors who stepped up to support the Film Forum. It is because of their financial support that we are able to bring this event to you free of charge. Thank you to Avid Bank, City National Bank, Northern Trust, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and the Savant Investment Group.
At Windrider, we source independent films telling stories of people in the midst of trying times who find unexpected solutions and constructive ways of dealing with problems. As we curate each program, we always ask ourselves whether the story is told through the lens of hope. At this moment in time, it seemed more important than ever to bring these stories to you.
Tonight, we are featuring 3 inspiring short films followed by Q&As with the filmmakers. The first film tonight is That's My Jazz by filmmaker Ben Proudfoot. That's My Jazz presents an intimate portrait of Milt Abel II, considered one of the best young pastry chefs in the world, becoming the head pastry chef at Thomas Keller's The French Laundry and Per Se, and sous pastry chef at Noma, Rene Redzepi's 2 Michelin star restaurant in Copenhagen. The son of Kansas City jazz legend Milt Abel Sr., Milt II longed to follow in his father's footsteps, but on a different stage. As he was just beginning to launch his career, his father's was coming to an end. That's My Jazz explores the universal question of who we are in relationship to our parents and our personal dreams. We're excited to share That's My Jazz with you, and we're honored to welcome Ben Proudfoot to a Q&A after the film with our very own Craig Detweiler.
If you were to put a button in front of me today where we would go back and I would say no to the French Laundry and stay at home with my dad, live in a split level apartment, take care of him, I would hit that button. I remember smoke everywhere, tuning basses, the smell of Grand Marnier. I remember gripping onto the front of the bass, right below the bridge, when my dad was trying to play. One of my earliest memories is I'd fall asleep on the stage. We were bar babies. We always went to the gigs and go home at 2 o'clock in the morning. I didn't have kids from around the block. I had these old cats. Most of my friends were 55, 60, 70 years old. People came to see him from everywhere. He was Milt Abel, Kansas City Jazz Hall of Famer. He was asked to sing at Charlie Parker's funeral. And I see him up there. I wanted to be on the stage with him. I don't think he could have done much more inside of Kansas City than he did.
Big noise, blowing from one that could, yes, yes.
My dad was the best at what he did. So then it's important for me, no matter what I do, to carry on that legacy and try to be a part of an elite few in whatever profession I chose. After I left college, working in the kitchen was a pretty good side gig. I didn't go to culinary school. I didn't have a natural talent for it. I had to work. I had been to a bunch of restaurants in the city, and I can't tell you how many times I heard, "Oh, we'll get back to you." Now I walk into this restaurant, it's like last-ditch effort. And I hand the application to the manager, and they said to me, "I'm gonna go get the chef and see if he can't come out here and talk to you." Boom, I knew that's it. So I sat down with this guy, his name was Michael Magliano, and I just said to him, "Look, I don't have any culinary school training, but I'll work really hard for you." This chef was so good. He just made me start enjoying what I was doing. I was going home and reading cookbooks, coming with recipes. He showed me the French Laundry Cookbook, which is a restaurant in Napa Valley, California, run by Chef Thomas Keller. And man, he told me these stories. Oh, this guy, he slept on a cot in the back of the restaurant for the whole time it was open. He started from nothing, and he just made me feel it. He made me start to really fall in love with this restaurant. And I'm just thinking, man, I didn't even know this world existed. And I really started to get into it. 60 years of carrying a base on your back, it's gonna wreck your spine. My dad was having trouble walking. He was losing his ability to play. And I'm like, "Hey, Dad, I'm going to California. I'm going to try for a job at this restaurant." I don't know if he knew I was serious, that this was the Carnegie Hall of the culinary profession. If I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it all the way. I can't see you living your life any other way. My family probably did need me at home, but they didn't tell me that. Chef Keller is the gold standard of cooking in the United States. If you wanna be one of the best at your craft, and this is all you wanted to do for your whole life, you're gonna go work for this guy and you're gonna go hone your skills. This is not frying wings anymore. This is not scooping ice cream and making sundaes. It's art, it's craftsmanship. It's so much more than I could even put into words. This is the end all be all. This is it. I had sat down with Chef Keller and I just explained to him that I wanted to be the head pastry chef of the French Laundry. Put me in a kitchen and tell me, I'll make me something nice and I'll do it. Step on stage and I'll create the scene. And I'll perform right then. It's just flowing out of you. You're feeling it. It's a lot of emotion, especially jazz. So much of your personality comes out in how you play. It's ganache time. Temper some chocolate, milk, cream. Drop my egg yolks in and burr mix it. Let's do some chocolate twirls. Spread our chocolate thin onto the acetate paper. Comb it, curl it, pour the ganache into the tart shell, and just let it gently cook until the custard is set. Pop it out of tin, tart's done. That's it, man. That's my jazz. It was 2007. I was living in California. I was at the French Laundry. Chef Keller started closing the restaurant so that we could all have vacation together. You know, a restaurant that runs 365 days is a tough place to work. It's really tough. And I went home to Kansas City. And yeah, I just didn't think anything was that bad. But I had some inkling that, I don't know why. I don't know why, but when I came back to the restaurant, I told the head chef, listen, I don't know what's going on, but I may have to go home to sort some things out sometime this year. I called him during the day to say hello, and my mother picked up the phone. And she let me talk to him. She put the phone to his ear. He was trying to say something, but he couldn't speak. And I told her I had to go, and I just went back to work. I have dedicated myself to my work my whole life, and I'm not gonna stop now. I worked until 2 in the morning, got home, and when I got home, then my phone rang. I asked to be transferred to Per Se in New York City. And then I got to Noma in Copenhagen. And at that time, Noma was ranked as #1 restaurant in the world. This is the top of the top. Part of the elite few. We would race to the bus stop every day. I felt bad because he was losing, so I fell down. Well, then he felt bad because I fell down, so he fell down too. You know, rolling around, laughing at each other. This guy's 60 years old. He's 61 years old. Just invincible. A great man, someone to aspire to be just like. And I think back on that all the time. He was able to be a professional and a father and do them both at the highest level. Hall of Fame jazz musician, Hall of Fame dad. I wasn't gonna be able to do both. And I had to choose what was more important to me.
Better than cream cheese and bagels, better than honey on bread, better than champagne and pretzels, better than breakfast in bed, better than chili grienos, better than chocolate eclairs, better than hothouse tomatoes, better than fresh Bartlett pears, better than dining a la carte or sampling gastronomic art, better than anything except being in love, better than anything except being in love.
It opens with a question filled with regrets, and in the end, That's My Jazz reveals so much heart and soul. Here to talk about That's My Jazz is award-winning director Ben Proudfoot. Welcome, Ben.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Ben, how did you find Milt, and when did you know that he had such a dynamic story to tell?
So I met Milton at about 11 o'clock at night. It was a January night in Copenhagen, Denmark. And whenever we find ourselves in interesting places like Copenhagen, we try to make a film, an original film for ourselves while we're there. And I had my heart set on making a love letter to Copenhagen. And I met a gentleman who said, you have to speak to this chef. He's an American chef working in Copenhagen, but he's an amazing guy. You got to meet him. So I had him earmarked for my love letter to Copenhagen. But when I met Milton in his under construction bakery at 11 o'clock at night, it was freezing cold. And he started telling, he's a really thin guy for a pastry chef, very thin. And he was telling me about his origins of Kansas City and that his father was this great jazz musician and that he had come from Kansas City and gone to the French Laundry with Thomas Keller and Per Se, and then finally Noma when it was the best restaurant in the world. I just said, okay, forget Love Letter to Copenhagen. We're making a film about Milton.
So Ben, you have some fascinating training and background that I think influences your filmmaking, your storytelling. As a younger man, what was it that you did, and how has that trained you?
Yeah, so I was, as a teenager, I was a magician, sleight of hand magician. So anything with cards, coins, I love. I competed for the Canadian Championship and the international. I won the international championship when I was 17, and it really trains your brain. It's a great hobby, and it was really more than a hobby for me as a teenager. I spent so much time practicing, because in magic, the first thing you do is you select the effect that you want on the audience. And it's a great way to think, because if you only attach yourself to the outcome and not any of the means of getting there, it's a fantastic mode of lateral thinking. Because rather than trying to do step by step, you just keep your eye on that thing, and you can move anywhere. You go 10 miles that way and then go around, right? And so in running a company or leading or whatever it is that you've got to do, especially in times like these when things are uncertain, you have to be agile. And I think what agile really means is not moving quickly. It's letting go quickly. And so as a magician, that's how we were trained. Think of the end outcome. What is the effect? And then work backwards from there. Anything is possible as long as you arrive at that point. And that has served me very well in life and business.
So That's My Jazz is this beautiful kind of senior, junior story about fathers and sons. What does it mean to you personally? How do you relate to this story?
I think in life we all, not all of us, but many of us experience this sort of sunrise, sunset moment that happens where your parents are retiring or they're just getting older and suddenly they have more time. And usually that coincides with you getting a career and you getting married and you having kids and you having no time. And there's this real tragedy, I think, to that because suddenly your parents have time to pay attention to you, to give you the time and energy and dedication that they didn't have for you as a little kid. Now they've got the time, but you don't have it for them. I often felt that just as I was traipsing off to Los Angeles to pursue my career in filmmaking, my dad was having more time. And you miss something there, I think, when you don't have that overlap where you're both adults and you can sort of see eye to eye. And so to me, that was something that was a real, it held a place in my heart. And that's why I needed to make the film.
So you're actually connecting with us. You're in Canada right now. What is your experience with coronavirus and this season of separation and isolation? What's that been like for you?
I've had it easy. I'm in Halifax, Nova Scotia, which is where I was born. I don't live here, but I happened to be here, visiting my parents. And my wife is here, and we've got plenty of room and space, so I've had it easy. I think what's been interesting is managing a company of 25 people who are mostly in Los Angeles. As the CEO of the company, people are looking to leadership, right? People are looking to leadership for guidance, what's going to happen next, answers to sometimes unanswerable questions. When will this end? Anybody's a good leader when there's lots of money and everything's going well. These are testing and trying times. And this is the moment to step up. So that's been a lot of my focus, is figuring out how to be a good leader to the people that are trusting our company.
We're honored to present That's My Jazz, and we look forward to more conversations like this in the future.
Thank you very much, Craig. It's been an honor.
Thank you, Craig, for taking the conversation deeper with Ben. As we saw in That's My Jazz, filmmakers have the unique ability to introduce us to people we've never met, who have very different lives, and yet they have life questions we can relate to. This is no exception in our next film, the Academy Award-nominated short documentary, Walk, Run, Cha-Cha. This story is about a couple who fled from Vietnam to make a new life for themselves in America. After years of adapting and persevering, they revisit their love of dance and regain the happiness of self-expression through movement to music. Whether you are a refugee rebuilding your life or just a person taking care of all of your responsibilities, who among us doesn't sometimes want to take a break and pursue something just for the joy of doing it? Enjoy the film, and afterwards we will hear from the filmmaker Laura Nix as she talks with Windrider CEO and co-founder John Pretty.
And we'll start with the twist exercise, slowly. And 2, 3, very slow. Cha, cha, 1, 2, 3. And cha, cha, 1. Good. 2, 3. Cha, cha, 1, 2, 3. Cha, cha, 1. Good. 2, 3. Cha, cha. Welcome back. 2, 3. Good.
I brushed my foot. I brought it back. Number 8. Number 8 to the side. Cha, cha, 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and single. 2, and 3, 4, and double.
And again.
2, and 3, and 4, and 1. 2, and 3, and 4, and single.
Very good.
2, and 3. I don't hear the feet. 2, and yes, and 4, and 1. 2, and 3, and 4, and 1. Back. 2, 3. Cha-cha, 1. Legs. 2, 3. Cha-cha, 1.
Eyes
2.
up, eyes up.
Yeah, eyes up. Cha-cha, 1, 2, 3.
Cha-cha, 1, 2, 3. Cha-cha, 1, 2, 3. And cha-cha, 1. Good. 2, 3. And cha-cha, 1. Good. 2, 3.
Before I learned dancing, I can only use my body to walk, to swim, to run. today, I can use my body to reach another level of freedom.
I wish I could have danced earlier at my age, but better late than never. We're lucky to have an opportunity and the right time, maybe the last time. Back in Vietnam, we danced to rock and roll. I love Bee Gees, and I can sing all Carpenter songs.
For us, it's called the foreign music. Foreign music tend to be very romantic, very, very sexy.
When I first met Paul, he was shy, so shy. I didn't think he is my type. But I remember he invited me to his birthday party.
You have to remember that dancing in those days in Vietnam, and it's illegal to have dance party at home. You can get in trouble, but we organize a party anyways.
He being gentleman, stretched out a hand. Shall we dance? We dance like what they call slow dance, just like two of us like crows. I feel he's shaking. I am too. I vividly remember he can dance. I start becoming his girlfriend because we in love so much, so in love.
I told my father, we have to leave the country to escape the communist Vietnam. The communists coming very soon right now, anytime. If you do business, they will go after you. But my mom was a real businesswoman. So soon enough, they started to come to harass my mom, say, you have to give up your house, you have to give up your factory. When we escape, we know we take the chance of the lifetime. Either we would die on the ocean, or if we get caught and we get sent home, we got nothing left.
Is that okay, my hair? Yeah. Oh, okay. One day he came, he said, tomorrow I have to leave. Oh, sorry, I could not bring you. And then he left. We were not sure whether we will see each other again.
Unchained Melody. Unchained Melody.
點樣唱啊？點樣唱啊？
Oh my love, my darling,
My darling.
Ai hậu hĩnh mà. Oh yeah. Santana. Oh yeah, come on.
Yeah.
Cha-cha, you know. Where do I begin to tell the story?
Love story.
Love story.
À, cái gì kết cái first boyfriend係邊個啊？秦漢啊？
I don't have the
Thuần Loan à?
the first
咩
and
星
last.
啊？Đó,係không tin
For the record.
你幾年出嚟？
我91年出嚟。
我84就出咗嚟啦。
哇，84嚟咗未啊？
嚇？
你91啊？
我79年嚟美國。
唔係即刻嚟到美國啊嘛？你
我即刻嚟美國。
唔係，
我係經過去台灣，喺南文台灣係咪？
越南嗰陣時，佢已經中意跳舞。
哦，yeah！如
It's
果佢拉丁依
like
家
when
幾
you
多
are
嗰啲？
50, 60 years old 都可以教。
Hey, what are you talking about? We already that age. We are already there.
飲咁多啫，你點咁講啊？
Canta fila,
am an auditor for the state of California. Some people, they think, oh yeah, good exercise, they say. But they didn't know we go compete, we go perform. We have the best professional teacher from Ukraine. If one day my coworker, they will see me dance, they will be shocked. They will never think I can dance the way I dance with my husband. Totally different two people.
I work as an engineer. We work full time. We can't afford to retire. Our daughter has her own life right now. So we go to the club at least 4 nights per week, taking group lesson, private lesson, and dance on the floor 3 hours in the evening. Why am I spending so much time dancing? Am I crazy? When I came to America, I was scared. We got nothing really. I love her and I care for her. I felt very sorry that I couldn't bring her with me. But I don't want to give empty promise or anything.
It felt really, really hard to accept. I didn't hear from him for 6 months. And then I got a letter from him. So romantic. He said even in his dream, he remembered my name. I started writing a lot of love letters to him. I was so eager to get out.
I talked to lawyers about an immigration petition process. I prepared to argue my case for her. I told her there's a possibility that I can get you out. It might not be successful.
The letter become so slow. He cannot always think of me, right? But then I received a notice from the embassy saying that I was allowed to leave Vietnam. I was so happy. Paul did so much effort.
I was excited, but after a long separation, there's a lot of uncertainty. I don't know whether we will be still the right kind of person for each other. We only met for 6 months, and we were separate for about 6 years.
Los Angeles, California. Once I got out from the plane, I saw Paul. I don't know how to feel. He looked a little bit like distant. He took my hand, and I feel weird because we lost that feeling. After a few days, he said, why don't we start over? Stretch.
Stressful.
Your hands are on her shoulders.
No, hands on my shoulder.
Good. And then it goes on her head. 2, 3. Take your head. Take it. Take your head.
Oh, okay, I got it.
Make it real. And 2. Take it very slowly. 2 across. And ronde. 3. Good, very slowly. Churumba walks. 4. And ronde. 1. Walk. Now, when she does this spiral, remember we close. Don't send her out. Hold her. So she does the telespin with you.
There's another telespin. Okay, I got it.
Bring your legs. Yeah, I know. I already.
Yeah, then don't you? The other way, honey. I'm gonna leave you right now, okay? Run.
Oh, wow. Oh, no, hold on a second. I'll do it again. Suddenly, okay, go.
Oh, no. It's not down there. It's under her ribs.
Yeah.
Can you please show me how you would send your wife there?
It's not like.
Turn.
Oh.
No, that's presenting. Opposite. I want you to like breathe. Like you want her to come back, but.
Okay. You want me to
Yeah.
reach? This one's.
Your body follow, like you follow that.
A little bit earlier. And
It's a little better. Remember, motion creates emotion.
Okay, motion.
Motion will create emotion.
Oh, okay.
And it goes backwards to emotion.
Motion create emotion. Come on.
He have no emotion, that's why.
Give him some.
her. Run. Good. Down.
When we came to this country, we have one goal. We want to establish our lives. Back then, we didn't have the luxury to enjoy life, not exactly knowing what it means to enjoy life. Now we have to learn something new. We know we don't have a lot of time left. We're making up for the lost time.
Just begun to live. White lace and promises, a kiss for luck and we're on our way. Before the rising sun, we fly. So
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us virtually for the Windrider Film Forum. What a great night it's already been, and there's still more to come. Please join me in welcoming the director of Walk, Run, Cha-Cha, Laura Nix. Hi, Laura.
Hey, John, it's really great to see you.
Well, thank you. Walk, Run, Cha-Cha. I just can't wait to get started talking about this amazing film. How did the story come about?
The story came about when I was doing research on another project, and I was in San Gabriel Valley researching different businesses in the area, and I saw that there was a dance studio. And so I walked in on a weekday afternoon and saw about 40 to 50 Asian people dancing the tango in the middle of the day. And I thought, what is this? What is this beautiful situation here? I need to understand more about that. So I decided to take dance classes there so I could answer that question. And what I learned was that it's a dance studio that employs mostly professional ballroom instructors who are coming from Eastern Europe. The clientele is made up of people from the Chinese diaspora from all over the world. And in one of my classes, there was a class being taught by Max and Elena, and Paul and Millie were in that class, and we became friends. And I asked them one day, after about a year of taking dance classes there, if they would allow me to film them, because I was interested in finding out more about their story. And thankfully they said yes, and then we started.
There are so many stories, wonderful stories told about refugees and immigrants, but they always start at the point of entry, whereas you came at this story through the lens of the present. And that's a really interesting choice, and one that I think makes this film very different and very unique.
I think that it's problematic when we only focus stories about refugees and immigration on the point of entry, because that, I think, ends up labeling people too much, and it focuses too much on someone's experience when they're at their most vulnerable and not when they're at their most strong. I really wanted the film to be able to celebrate that and to celebrate the reinvention that Paul and Millie have made in their middle age after they reinvented themselves the first time when they first came to America.
It just reminds me, being a documentary producer, there's a scene I have to ask you about at the beginning of the film where it's out of sync. The audio is out of sync from the visual. And I'm just curious, was that intentional? Why did you do that? What was the thinking behind that?
Well, people always ask me why I decided to edit it when it was out of sync with the picture. And the truth is I never actually shot those interviews on camera. All my interviews with Paul and Millie were audio only. When people are on camera, it tends to be more uncomfortable, and they're less likely to feel that they can be candid with you. And so I did about 14 hours of audio interviews with Paul and Millie. I did them separately so that they would feel comfortable speaking about things. And what I learned is that they ended up telling me things that they'd actually never told each other. And when I was doing those portrait shots, I thought I would use them in a different way. And actually my editor started playing around with it. And we discovered it in the edit room one day where we took those portrait shots and we edited them with the audio interviews. And we found a really interesting tension to not have them in sync. And that's how that scene came about.
Wow, pulling back the curtain and going behind the scenes. That's an amazing insight. I would have never guessed that. So I read an article that you had filmed Paul and Millie for 6 years. Talk about how the film changed, how the story unfolded, having been together with them for over 6 years.
Well, when I first started filming with Paul and Millie, I wasn't quite sure what the story would be about. And I knew that I would need to spend a bunch of time in the community in order to really understand what I wanted the story to be. So I thought at first that I would be focused mostly on the studio and specifically on a community of people who are aging and what it means to dance at a later age. I was curious about why people were dancing so seriously and why people were so committed to it. But that question became even more important the more time I spent with Paul and Millie, because here are two people who are dancing 5-6 days a week, even though they have full-time jobs. I mean, that's just incredible amount of energy and time to spend. And that was when the film really started to turn and became much more of a love story. It didn't start that way, and that required really gaining Paul and Millie's trust so that they would open up and tell me something more personal than what we began with.
You've told me on a couple of occasions that you come at films cinematically through the side door to really like disarm a topic. Talk a little bit about that, how you do that stylistically.
I think that all my films are usually about social issues in some way, but instead of kind of coming at that head on, I think that you're more likely to surprise people and engage people if you don't necessarily hit the issue on the head, but you show another way of thinking about something. You know, Paul and Millie are refugees to this country, and it's a highly political issue, and people have a lot of opinions about it. So I think it's a moment where you have to be very conscious about what it means to be telling a refugee story. And I was very conscious about that. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to make sure that I honor that part of Paul and Millie's story. But as a storyteller, I'm also looking for what is universal about Paul and Millie's story that anybody can relate to. And there's so many aspects of this film that introduce universal themes, like how do we reconnect in marriage after being together for a really long time? How do we figure out how to have energy when we hit middle age? These are things that anybody can relate to. And so if we only choose to look at Paul and Millie as refugees, we're missing out on another aspect of their story that is far greater and richer than just thinking about them and how we might define them through that one moment in their youth.
And we get to the final scene, and you're a Peabody Award-winning, Academy Award-nominated filmmaker. You've made some amazing documentaries, and yet you chose to make a stage scene. Talk a little bit about this creative decision to really go off of strict documentarian sort of etiquette, if you will, and create this final sequence.
You know, if you ran into Paul and Millie, like in the grocery store, let's say you were standing next to them in line, you would have no idea what they're capable of. You would have no idea that on weekends they put on their sequins and they compete. And the contrast between who they are in their work lives and who they are when they're just like at home taking care of their family and what they look like when they're performing is really, it's dramatic. And I wanted to up that drama as much as possible. And I knew that it would be really important to heighten that contrast as much as I possibly could. And I wanted that scene to show what it's like in Paul and Millie's head when they're dancing, to show a kind of fantasy world of who they are and who they want to be and how they're achieving it by creating a really heightened atmosphere. I also wanted to elevate their dancing. Usually you only see dance sequences like that with professional dancers. And so I really wanted to see their dancing and their dance moves like heightened to the level like watching Singing in the Rain or, watching, a scene that we've seen in like Hollywood films.
Well, perfect music to a perfect ending to a beautiful dance sequence. Laura, thank you so much for being with us. It really was a pleasure.
Thank you, John, for having me back. It's such a pleasure to be part of this virtual forum. It's very cool, and I'm glad you guys are doing it.
John and Laura, thank you both. We hope you've been enjoying our program so far. If you're interested in continuing to support independent filmmakers and hear from them about their work, we invite you to join us for our Windrider Summer Film Series. Starting on July 5th, we will be streaming short films free of charge for 7 consecutive weeks in July and August. Each film will be followed by a Q&A with either the filmmaker or subject of the film. These films will be screening live at 7 p.m. Pacific time every Sunday, but will be available on demand after the screening date if you would prefer to rewatch the films or schedule a different time to watch with family and friends. We have also provided an exploration guide for each film if you'd like to have a conversation with your family and friends around the important themes and ideas in each film. We're calling this new opportunity the Windrider Film Club. We hope that by opening up a space for compelling conversations, we can begin to reflect on what it means to journey through this world together with empathy and understanding. To join the Windrider Summer Film Series, visit windriderbayarea.org on July 5th at 7 p.m. Pacific time to watch our first film, the Student Academy Award-winning film, Nocturne in Black.
Thank you, Will, for telling everyone about the Summer Film Series and the Windrider Film Club. Our mission at Windrider is to shine a light and truly shift your lens to see hope in the midst of all these trying times. So shut your eyes for just a moment and take a deep breath. Think about what all artists do for us. They can reveal our shared humanity, show us a path to healing, and help us see hope in unexpected ways. The perspective offered by these filmmakers might be needed now more than ever. We started the evening with a man who grew up with jazz music and found his own harmony in cooking. We moved on to a couple finding their joy in dancing, and we're finishing the evening with the story of building one's identity through tap dancing. Our closing film for the evening, Identity, the Andrew Nimmer story, tells the story of a man searching for a way to rid himself of the label society has placed on him. How does a boy from an immigrant family who struggled with being bullied, with a passion for tap dancing, navigate the world and find his own identity? His journey, the ups and downs of his life and career, is expressed through the magic in his feet. After the film, we will hear from the filmmaker Jonathan Zippity, as well as the one and only Andrew Nimmer. We're happy to include a few questions from our Windrider Film Club for John and Andrew.
If you believe in the idea that things can change the world, then tap has the power to change the world.
In the world of dance, tap is a quintessentially American form, and for dancer Andrew Nimmer, it's also a great way to tell stories.
Andrew is really quite a miraculous dancer. You know, I sort of knew it from reputation, but I hadn't actually experienced it in the room.
I fell in love with Andrew when he performed for his TED Fellow Talk. His love and his spirit all came out in it, and you just wanted to join him on the stage.
You know, if there was a way to credit a PhD in tap dance, it would be it. The knowledge of his body has literally filtered up into his brain, and quite a brain he has.
Dad, just talk to me. Just talk to me. Just keep my...
Okay. How long have you been dancing?
I've been dancing for, gosh, going on 27 years now. And I like to say it's the longest relationship I've ever been able to have. We're here at Tribeca Performing Arts Center. We just loaded in this week. We're about ready to start tech for my first one-man show, Rising to the Tap. Every show is special, but this one is unique in that it's the first time that I expose all of my stories in one sitting. It feels like a roller coaster for me. So I'm hoping that some of that translates, and then, you know, then we get to dance while doing it, which is kind of the undercurrent of my life.
All of humanity is based on a story. What Andrew's doing right now is he's practicing a way of communicating the story he's going to be telling on the stage tonight.
Up alone in my bedroom, I'd make a list of all the things that I thought I might be and see if the combination rang true. Tap dancer, Lebanese, American, Canadian, Middle Eastern, Phoenician, Christian, good student, art student, bullied, loner, fat kid, only child. My folks asked me how I felt about having a sibling, and I asked them outright for an older brother.
Being an only child, need to do activities with kids. We saw a Chris Collins dance studio. We asked Andrew if he'd like to go, and he said yes. So Andrew and I went, and Chris Collins, he asked you, would you like to come and try this class? And you said, sure.
My childhood weekends and afternoons were spent practicing unison dancing. Big, bright smiles, kick lines, and yes, jazz hands. I realized that it was something that I could be good at. Like if I was gonna do something, you do it so that you can be good at it. And if I wasn't gonna be good at it, like I wouldn't wanna do it.
Besides growing up in Lebanon, I grew up in a family that me as a painter, I was laughed at. Art is not something that you make a living out of. You wanna be an artist, you're a poor man for life.
But like Joseph and I, we did not agree with the culture of back home. So for us, Andrew, doing this was not something that was wrong. For the family, the extended family, really? Is that what you're encouraging your son to do?
Yeah, it changed again. So we're standing on the corner of, 62nd and 1st. This is where Le Cave used to be. This is the first place where I improvised in public ever. Jimmy Slide used to host this tap jam on Wednesday nights. And they would fit, like, all the dancers who danced over the course of the set would all come back up at the end, and we'd fit everybody on the stage. But yeah, this was the spot. As a teenager, I would have huge, like, emotional purges on account of the fact that I did not have a lot of friends. At the time, I was exactly the same weight that I am now, but about 8 inches shorter. There was a group of underclassmen, kids younger than I was. They took a liking to just tripping me any chance that they got. And then there was the language. They'd yell out my unmistakably Arabic last name, Nimmer! One would yell out, terrorist! Another one would say, hey, Tin Man! You know what that means? See, the symbol for tin is SN in the periodic table of elements. He'd be laughing. And SN stands for sand nigger! That's you! Being bullied is weird. It's just, you're never the prototypical hero if you're the person being bullied. The bullying just compounded this, like, internal story of being an underdog and being separate and being different and not having a place where I could just exist. February 1989, I saw the movie Tap. The film featured 3 generations of tap dancers: Sammy Davis Jr., Gregory Hines, Savion Glover. It was the first time I'd ever seen tap dancing that was improvisational, evocative of the people who were doing the dancing, and I fell in love. I came out of that movie theater and I was like, I want to do that. I don't know what I've been doing. I left the theater with one goal in mind: meet Gregory Hines. And I had a plan. I gave myself 30 years to do it. Life is funny. I met Greg within a year of seeing the movie Tap. I met Savion Glover the same day. So much for my plan. And we're in. So I'm sitting in the back of this jazz club with my parents on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. It's Wednesday night at Le Cave, which means it's the night of the Tap Jam, a gathering of the city's best tap dancers hosted by the master himself, Jimmy Slide. I'm there on account of another master, a younger one, Savion Glover. Savion and I were close, and he had invited me. Well, if Savion said to be somewhere, I was there. And my parents, they were the supportive type.
Once he met Gregory and Savion, we put 140,000 miles on the car because we kept coming up. So it was like, there is a workshop in New York. Okay, that's all what Andrew needed to say.
Then things started happening that very quickly allowed me to be around those people. Right? I met Gregory Hines, I met Savion Glover, I started working with Savion, started chasing Greg around. And by the time I got to high school, I was hanging out with some of the best tap dancers in the world.
He was kind of one of the pack. And then one day he showed up backstage. That was when, you know, he kind of stood out of the crowd because nobody really gets backstage unless they're invited by Greg.
But I knew I was in Greg's true circle when he handed me his email address. Something he didn't do lightly. I was in. Still, it took me about 6 months before I wrote him. And when I did, it wasn't even about tap dancing. I wrote, "Help! I've just broken up with a girl and I don't know what to do." He wrote back, "I hear you, my brother. Dance it out." I went from like a single tap dancer in a dance school to part of this intergenerational lineage of dancers from 80 years old to basically me and maybe a few other cats in my generation, like being the youngest of that generation at the time. Savion Glover was the heir apparent to the Gregory Hines torch, right? And as we got closer, you know, working more and more together, I would travel to see him. His family and I got close. We'd go over to the house, he would come over to our house. He was the older brother that I never had. We had tap dancing in common. There wasn't much else. Savion described it once as like, we had a mutual friend that kind of brought us together. One of my favorite memories was just driving into the city with him. We were coming in from Jersey into Manhattan. He was driving his white Chevy Blazer. I was riding shotgun. The music was blasting. We were drumming on the interior of the car and the dashboard. The conversation quickly turned to the latest and greatest gadgets. I admitted to asking my folks for a Sony Sports Discman for Christmas. Savion turned to me and said, "Hey, grab the wheel." He kept his foot on the gas, rummaging in his duffel bag in the back seat. We're hooking down the Lincoln Tunnel Helix, a large, sharp downhill turn. I've got my hand on the wheel. I see traffic up ahead. I swerve the car around this turn. Before I could yell for help, Savion emerged. He had the Discman in his hand. "Here, you hold on to it." I was in.
Andrew suffers the feeling of wanting so bad to be with people and then having things that he can't control, like race or history, tear him apart.
My parents are from Beirut, Lebanon. They were both born and raised there. In the Middle East, they left the country in 1976 because of the Civil War.
We're hearing commotion outside, you know, people yelling and screaming, whatever chant, they're excited. And all of a sudden, there's that zing. The bullet traveled, hit the lock of the door, hit the fridge, ricocheted and hit Marlene and her leg.
I mean, I've been hearing stories of all these places my entire life. When standardized tests first started and they started putting the race question on it, I was other. And that was a question in my family. Because they're like, "No, we're white." And I'm like, "No, we're not. Like, I'm from over here." So, then put other.
Andrew's an immigrant. His family come from the Middle East. When he's in the tap communities, he was seen as the white guy. Legacy in the tap world is hugely important. Who's your lineage? Where did you come from? Who are your teachers? Andrew comes from one of the most sterling legacies you can come from in American tap dance, right up to the total invention of tap dance in America. The number of people who can do that and are not black is a much smaller number. Andrew's arc is feeling, I don't really fit in anywhere, and then finding a community, oh my gosh, that kind of wraps him up in the warm embrace of love, and then he's kind of ripped apart from that community around race.
5 years. 5 years of being mentored and hanging with the grandpa, uncle, and older brother that I never had. 5 years of hanging with Savion at tap festivals and tap jams and workshops. 5 years of barbecues at Savion's house, chilling with my folks and his family. 5 years of being on the inside. Savion asked me to come and be a part of this crew called Real Tap Skills. It was Savion and 4 other guys that were all from the DC metro area. It was like my first experience in being in a crew. That group was kind of Savion's posse, people that he wanted to dance with. Whatever he did, I trusted explicitly. He was the guy, and I loved him. So one weekend, we go into New York City. Real Tap Skills has a gig at the Delacorte Theater. That's where they do Shakespeare. We're headlining this show called Doing It in the Park. The show was a hit. We got a huge standing ovation. The New York Times wrote a review, and they spelled my last name correctly. I was getting calls from folks saying, like, something big is about to happen, like, get ready, it's gonna be really cool, but you gotta be ready for this. Like, okay, great. Because, you know, the past 5 years have been amazing, so whatever next thing is also going to be amazing. The phone never rang. I heard through the grapevine that all of Real Tap Skills, well, everybody but me, was already working on something. Then a summer goes by, and I have no contact with any of the guys that I've been dancing with for the past 5 years. Then the phone rang. It was Savion's mom. She said, "Hey, I got you tickets to the opening night of Bringin' the Noise, Bringin' the Funk." And I said, "Great, thanks. I'll see you there."
Here with a number from the show that illustrates what happened when newly emancipated black workers left the South for factories of the North, Savion Glover and the company of Bring In the Noise, Bring In the Funk.
The whole noise funk situation led me down a path of, should I be doing this? Am I meant to be doing this anymore? If I can't dance with these people, I don't want to be dancing. Was I out? The next phone call I got was from Savion's mom. She was inviting me to the closing night of Bring In the Noise, Bring In the Funk on Broadway. I sat next to my buddy Kazu Kumagai, a phenomenal tap dancer from Japan who was also close with Savion. There's a scene in the show called Conversations, in which the entire cast comes out and they form a circle. This time the circle was special. Past cast members, special guests, Greg was there, they all came out for the scene. As the scene played, Kaz turned to me, "Hey man, we should go up there. I don't know if we should go up there. Listen, if you go up there, I'll go up too. We'll go together." So we got up, walked straight down the aisle, and right up onto the stage. We stopped. Savion gave us this look. Without saying a word, we knew we weren't welcome. We didn't dance a step. We walked up, walked straight off. I was out. You're witnessing the thing that you would love to be a part of and can't be a part of without having a conversation where somebody tells you, "Listen, this is why you can't be a part of this." And at 16 years old, having had like the
the framework of a familial relationship with a lot of these guys, that was just very, very hard to take. Well, I don't even know, man. It hit me like a ton of bricks when that gift was taken away. It's like when that separation happens, it's not just, okay, I don't get to dance with the world's best tap dancer anymore. It's like, no, my family left me. And you don't know what to do after that.
After you spend kind of very focused time with someone like Savion, when you leave that kind of situation, it's very hard to go into another situation where somebody else is the leader, because you've just been around like the best guy. And so, you know, I took maybe 6-7 months to figure out what the next thing was going to be, and it ended up being the start of my own company. I need to be dancing with other people. And so I call up 2 friends. We go into the studio. I start seeing something formulate.
Andrew started calling me up directly saying, hey Rob, I think you might want to work on the show with me.
And all of a sudden I find myself as responsible for 7 tap dancers and the brand of a company and kind of all these things that less than a year ago it was 3 people sitting in a kitchen in Harlem going, hey, what do you guys think about this idea?
They were very high quality productions. When you love something so much, you inspire all the people around you.
We bankrolled a significant amount of money on credit cards in the trust that when the thing turned, it would turn in the way that we thought it would, and then everything would be fine. Well, the thing turned in 2008. We got to a point where we could do, you know, we did a 6-show run as our 10th anniversary. It kind of ran its course. You could say that, or you could say, like, it never found its legs. You know, you make a choice and say, all right, we're gonna put that to bed. And so I ended up filing for personal bankruptcy.
We live in a culture where what you do for work is very much a part of who you are. Like it either gives you value or takes value away. And there's no truth in that.
There came a time, provisional ebbs and flows, and I was in an ebb. I was looking for residencies, because residencies for an artist are this beautiful kind of thing where you're given time and space to work on something. I found the local TEDx in New York City, so I write the app and I send it in. And I don't think about it. I think it was 2 months later, I get an email and they're like, congratulations, you get this thing. And I literally, I read it and I fell on the floor. None of my history pointed to tap dancing being my eventual profession. My parents are from Beirut, Lebanon, not a hotbed of tap dancing.
TED Fellows, many of them are doctoral students, and they are studying something like astronomy or technology. Andrew wasn't. He was an artist, and there were very few performing artists with TED. There were a couple things that stood out to me. First of all, how much he was doing, how alone he was in doing it. I gave him a wonderful team, very creative people that were money-minded too.
One of my coaches, he goes to the easel and starts drawing this Venn diagram of different areas of pursuits that seem to be places where I've found work. And then smack dab in the center, she writes love.
When Andrew first came to the Clavatorium, the thing he said was that I'm a tap dancer. And I have love in my heart. And that was his identity. With the exercise that the group did with him, he realized that the energy was tap dance and that who he was an embodiment of love.
Up until that moment, I'd been living a life like tap dancing was the most important thing. Being able to see that caring for people was more important than the craft work.
Who he is love, and people recognize that in him, and that's what we're all aching for, isn't it?
My dad had a dream where he found out my name. And so throughout my life, like, Andrew has been a thing, right? Andrew's not a common name in Lebanon at all. There was a time in my life where I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, really. And I'm like, well, my name is Andrew. So what did Andrew do? So I went to the Bible, and Andrew brought Peter to Christ. I realized that, like, I'm not supposed to be the guy who has the information. I'm supposed to be the guy that points people to where it is.
Andrew's journey is all about this journey of an immigrant who's exiled from his homeland and yet creates and redefines what homeland is. He's, in a way, an evangelist for tap dance. He is missional in his core.
His work ethics is not just developed as an artist. His work ethics goes back to when he was a little kid. It's something that came with the blessing. It was born in him.
It's easy to question your identity, but I think the more people appreciated tap dancing, the more ovations he got at TED. I think his confidence grew, and as his confidence grew, it was easy for him to stand in his identity. His difference and his distinction was what made him special and was part of his gift to give the world.
And I asked him, you want to change the world? He said, yeah, I would like to do that.
If you have a story, that story has to be told. Otherwise, it just boils down to like, hey, I'm Andrew and I'm a tap dancer, and that's kind of it. And that's fundamentally meaningless.
Hi everyone, my name is Jonathan Sipity. I am the director of Identity, the Andrew Nemmer story. Really glad that we can continue the conversation with Andrew Nemmer. Andrew, thank you for being here.
Pleasure to be here, John.
Well, good. I'm excited to keep talking about this. I mean, looking back on the film, now having seen it and gone through it, what are your reflections on it?
Oh, wow. I think the thing that's struck me is how much of an ongoing question this is. Every time I get close to like a very succinct answer or a very like, okay, this is exactly what it is, or this is where I find that thing that I've been searching for, it dodges. It moves just far enough away that like, okay, and you keep moving, and you keep following it.
A big part of your story and a big part of your performance is you bring the audience into that and you kind of lay it all out there for them. How do you feel about bringing the audience into your story?
It's scary. It's like every, before a live show or even, before a screening of the film, I get nervous. I don't know how this story is going to affect people, and the only way to get the story out is to be as open as possible. And so my hope is that it affects people like well and in a good way and for their benefit. But to be in that disposition is totally scary. Yeah.
Well, Andrew, you're in luck because we actually have some more questions from people who've seen the film. We have some questions from the Windrider Film Club who have watched the film, and I'd love to just talk about a few of those now.
Sure.
So we have a question from Suzanne, and the question's actually about my favorite character in the film. Your mom. Your mom has a line that still sticks with me. She is talking about the time when you came to her when you were younger and you said you wanted to change the world. So Suzanne's question is, how do you think you're doing that?
I don't know. Looking back and even hearing my mom say that in the film, it strikes me that I think as I was younger, my scope for what the world was might have been a little bit smaller than what I see it today. And as an artist, there's an experience that you go through where you put something out into the world and you don't know where it's going to go or how far it's going to go or who it's going to affect. But you do the work that you can.
When we talk about changing the world on this grand scale, it seems like this impossible task, but really, I think this is how I see you're changing the world, is when you're with people, you're with people. You've at least changed my world.
So I get to ask a question now. This one's from Kevin, and he wants to know why you focus so much on my feet in the cinematography of the film.
Well, you have great feet, first of all.
Thank you.
A few different reasons. I mean, I'm new to tap. I know nothing about it, and that is where I feel like I was drawn first. We focus primarily on the feet in the beginning of the film, but it was pretty intentional that as we go through the film, and then at the end of the film, the final shot, there's not a lot of feet other than to show you took your shoes off.
So it's interesting to see what you did with the cinematography in the film and to hear you describe that, because that's exactly what happens with somebody who laces up a pair of tap shoes for the first time because of this kind of like perception, right? Like all the action is happening down at the floor, so that's where the focus should be. But actually the system is the body, like, and the body, where the body moves the feet. It's not vice versa. So we've got another question. This one's from Tracy, and she's asking about particularly the last scene in the film. Could you talk about, I guess, your inspiration or how that scene came about?
That's actually a really good question, and it's one that comes up a lot. The last scene of the film was the first thing we ever filmed, and we filmed it before we even knew we were doing a short film with you. We were in Japan, 100 miles off the coast of Nagasaki, in one of the oldest churches, the hidden Christian churches in Japan from the era of Christian martyrdom. And it was a small group of us, maybe like 15, 20 people. And I think you said, "Can I dance?" That was a pretty risky question because we had to take our shoes off.
Yeah, the floor was beautiful.
It's from that era.
Wood floor.
That was one of the most special moments of my life. I knew from the beginning, before we filmed anything else with you, that's how we were ending the film. So here's a question from Helen, and she wants to know, what's your relationship with Savion like now?
Unfortunately, my relationship with Savion is just non-existent. You know, looking back at it, there's very easily kind of a perspective that would say, like, everybody goes through that stuff. Just take it and, you know, move on, right? And I think for me, it was like a breakdown of my entire worldview. You know, the Lebanese perspective of family is potentially very different than other perspectives, but it's like blood is blood, right? It's like you don't ever leave your parents, you don't leave the house. Like there's a lot of things that come from that culture that I just projected, right? I said, okay, well, this is my older brother. That means we're family. That means this is what this means. To not have the conversation and then to have to try and like figure it out was really hard.
And I think that distinction of two cultures is really interesting. And it makes me think of something you and I have talked about a lot. But what's it like being a white guy in an African-American art form?
That's a question that I get quite often, particularly in the cultural context that we live in today. It's a really important one to address head on. Tap dance is fundamentally an American art form rooted in the African-American experience. There's no way that we would have tap dancing without the cultural contribution of the African Americans. The majority of tap dance education as a formal pursuit, and it's the way that I started, was in a suburban dance school where most of the students are not of African American descent. Being someone who looks white but comes from a cultural context that isn't, and having been invited into the African American community and that tradition, which looks at tap dancing as a cultural form, not just this thing that you do so that you're good at it, allows me to think about it, or think about the pursuit a little differently. Tap dancing for me at this point is like an embodied experience of cultural empathy. You're putting your body to work to discover how somebody else dances, right? And how somebody else moves. And the way that they move is an expression of who they are and where they come from. For, you know, a young suburbanite to connect to, you know, one of the cool cats, and they now know someone who's cross-cultural and they're dancing like them. So the next time they see somebody who moves differently, who speaks differently, who has a different personality, who comes from a different culture, they're not going to experience cognitive dissonance. We have to have a grid or a lens for what actually is a healthy culture. Because whatever we're going to end up with has to be healthy for everybody. Finding that language is hard. But that's the work.
Thank you so much, Andrew. As always, it is amazing talking to you. Thank you for tolerating one more interview. And thanks for talking about this film. I mean, I know it's impacted us both in so many ways.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome.
Thank you, John and Andrew. It is such a pleasure to have you both here with us tonight. I've had the immense honor of watching Andrew dance live, and it truly is a unique experience. As we close this evening, I've asked Andrew to dance for you. Andrew will dance to an original piece of music we commissioned. It was composed by his good friend, Max ZT. We are honored to celebrate these two talented artists, Andrew and Max. Andrew and Max, thank you. I can't think of a better way to end the evening. We appreciate our filmmakers and all of you for being with us tonight for the Windrider Virtual Film Forum, and we appreciate all of our donors and sponsors. Looking forward to seeing you for the Windrider Summer Film Series starting July 5th at 7 p.m. Good night, everyone.